August 8, 1963. A little after 3 a.m., in the dark countryside of England, a Royal Mail train screams through the night, carrying millions in cash from Glasgow to London. Inside the cab, 58-year-old driver Jack Mills suddenly sees something that makes no sense. The signal ahead is red. On this stretch of track at this hour, that signal should never be read, especially not for a high-priority Royal Mail train, but the rules are the rules. Jack pulls the brake. The massive train grinds to a halt in the middle of nowhere. Silence settles over the tracks. No stations, no houses. No one in sight. What Jack doesn't know is that he's just driven straight into one of the most audacious, precisely planned robberies in history. A robbery where the target wasn't just the money, but the train itself. Welcome to Obscured Crimes. Today, we're digging into the real-life heist that sounds like a Hollywood script. The 1963 Great Train Robbery. A job pulled off with no guns fired, millions stolen, a vanishing insider, and a single, stupid mistake that brought almost everyone down. Stay with this one because the wildest part isn't the robbery, it's what they did afterwards. The train worth stealing. On the evening of August 7th, 1963, a Royal Mail train pulled out of Glasgow Central Station, heading for London's Euston Station. This wasn't a passenger train. It was a moving fortress of money and mail. 12 carriages. 72 postal workers on board, sorting letters and parcels as the train sped through the night. No long stops. No delays. At each station, local postal staff would hang bags of mail on special trackside hooks. As the train roared past slowing, only slightly workers inside would snag the bags with a net, pull them in, and toss off outgoing bags in one smooth motion. This process kept mail moving fast across the country. But one carriage was more important than all the others. It was called the HVP Coach High Value Packages. This is where the real money rode: banknotes, registered mail, cash being transferred between banks and cities. On a normal night, you might see the equivalent of around £300,000 in that single coach. On this night, there would be around 3 million, tens of millions in today's dollars. And that wasn't an accident. Someone on the inside had been talking. The mastermind and the unknown insider in London. A well-connected criminal named Bruce Reynolds was putting together something big. Reynolds wasn't a street thug, he was a planner. A guy who thought in months, not minutes. He'd gotten his hands on something priceless. Secret. Information from a senior security officer inside the Royal Mail. To this day, no one knows who that insider really was. According to Reynolds, this mystery man told him two crucial things. First, every night, the Glasgow-London mail train carried a high-value packages coach. On a particular date, after a bank holiday weekend, that coach would be loaded with far more cash than usual, around 10 times the normal amount. Second, Royal Mail had started fitting some of these HVP coaches with new security alarm systems. But on that specific night, the alarm-equipped coaches would be out of service, which meant the train would be using an older, reserve coach. No alarms. No special locks. Just bags of money and a standard carriage. For a professional thief, that wasn't just a tip. That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Reynolds knew he couldn't hit a moving train with his usual crew alone. They had no experience with railways. So he brought in another group, a gang with a reputation for robbing trains, known as the South Coast Raiders. Together, the two groups built a team of around 15 to 16 men. Career criminals, safe crackers, heavy muscle, and even a retired train driver. Their mission was ambitious: stop a government train in the middle of the night, separate the money coach, move it to a pre-planned location, empty it, disappear, all without firing a single shot. They spent months planning every step, but one tiny detail they almost overlooked would later haunt them. Turning a green signal red in the early hours of August 8th, the mail train rolled through the English countryside. By now, the precious HVP coach loaded with currency had been coupled near the front, just behind the locomotive. Up ahead at a place called Sears Crossing, the gang was waiting in the dark. They had already cut the lines to the trackside telephone. If anyone tried to call the signal box, they'd get nothing. Then, one of the robbers climbed up to the signal and went to work. He covered the green light with a leather glove, hiding it from view. Then he wired a battery to the red light, forcing it to glow as if the signal were set to stop. From the driver's cab, it looked perfectly legitimate. Around 3 a.m., Jack Mills saw that red light. He was surprised, even a little uneasy, but protocol demanded he obey it. He slowed the train and brought it to a halt right at Sears crossing. That's when things started to go very wrong for Jack. His assistant, known in British rail terms as the second man, climbed down from the cab to use the trackside telephone and ask the signalman what was going on. He picked up the phone. Dead. Before he could make sense of it, figures emerged from the darkness. Men in work clothes and masks surged toward him, grabbed him, and dragged him away from the train. At the same time, other robbers climbed up on both sides of the locomotive, forcing their way into the cab. Driver Jack Mills tried to resist. One of the gang members smashed him over the head with an iron bar. Jack collapsed in his seat, badly injured and semi-conscious. While that violence unfolded, other members of the gang uncoupled the first two coaches, the locomotive and the HVP carriage, from the rest of the train. The plan was to literally steal the front of the train, but there was a problem. Their backup driver had never operated this particular type of engine. He took one look at the unfamiliar controls and froze. He had no idea how to move it. For a gang that had planned almost everything, this was a nightmare. They had no choice. They revived the bleeding, stunned Jack Mills and forced him to drive. The Monopoly board that brought them down as news of the crime of the century hit the press. The British public was stunned. A government train, robbed in the middle of the night. 14 male workers attacked. Millions gone. The police put up a reward £10,000 for information leading to the gang. Before long, a neighbor from near Leatherslade Farm came forward. He'd seen unusual activity there, lots of vehicles, people coming and going, sudden departures right after the robbery. Investigators headed straight for the farmhouse. What they found inside was a forensic gold mine, empty mailbags, post office materials. The truck used in the robbery hurriedly repainted yellow, but still recognizable. And despite the gang's attempts to wipe everything clean, fingerprints, on doors, on surfaces, and on something nobody should ever leave behind at a crime scene, the Monopoly board. Some of the robbers had used their bare hands to play with real stolen money. They had shuffled, dealt, and passed around banknotes while leaving their prints all over the game pieces. Back in the lab, those prints were compared against the files at Scotland Yard. Most of these men weren't first-time offenders. They had criminal records. One by one, the prints started matching names. Bruce Reynolds, other known London criminals, members of the South Coast Raiders. Within weeks, police began rounding them up. Out of roughly 16 key figures, 14 were eventually arrested. In court, the judge made a statement. This wasn't an ordinary robbery. This was an attack on the state itself. Almost all of the captured gang members were sentenced to up to 30 years in prison. The media dubbed it the Great Train Robbery, and Bridego Bridge, where the cash was off-loaded, became known locally as Train Robbers Bridge. The men who got away, but even as the trials ended, two ghosts remained. The insider and the mystery driver. The man inside Royal Mail, the senior security official who allegedly fed crucial details to Bruce Reynolds, was never publicly identified. No real name, no confirmed face. If he existed, he walked away untouched, having set up one of the most infamous robberies in British history. Then there was the stand-in train driver the gang brought along. He panicked when he saw the modern locomotive controls and couldn't move the train. In accounts of the robbery, he's sometimes referred to only by vague nicknames. His true identity has never been firmly established. They were the two shadows behind the headlines. And to this day, they remain part of what keeps this story alive. A perfect plan on paper, ruined not by police brilliance at the scene, but by human error afterwards. The cost of a legendary heist. As for the people caught in the middle, the fallout was grim. Train driver Jack Mills never fully recovered from the head injury he received that night. He couldn't return to work. He lived only about 7 more years before passing away, many say from the stress and trauma of the robbery. The Royal Mail strengthened its security procedures. High-value coaches got better alarms, better locks, and stricter protocols. The romance of the gentleman robber was already starting to fade. Because behind the headlines and the movie scripts, the Great Train Robbery wasn't just a caper. It was violence, fear, lasting damage to ordinary workers who were just doing their jobs. And the gang that thought they'd outsmarted the system? They were brought down not by a brilliant detective, but by a missed cleanup job. And a board game played with stolen cash. A crime built on precision, undone by carelessness. You've been watching Obscured Crimes. If you were the insider at Royal Mail, would you have come forward or taken that secret to your grave? And what do you think? Did the unknown insider and the mystery driver really get away? Or were they quietly dealt with off the record? Let me know your theories in the comments. If you want more deep dive stories into the heists, mysteries, and forgotten cases that history tried to bury, make sure you subscribe to Obscured Crimes and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Because some of the darkest stories are the ones hiding in plain sight.